Hey everybody, we are back in the very first book of the Bible. I need your Bibles open to Genesis chapter 20. We are exploring, of course, Genesis as the book of beginnings. Tonight, I want to talk with you about the beginning of the chosen family line. We're talking about Abraham and Sarah, right? In Genesis chapter 20, Abraham gets himself in trouble again by saying of Sarah, his wife, again, she is my sister. He had journeyed down to the south, down in this region described as Gerar, and they had a king, right? A king called Abimelech, and Abimelech had taken Sarah. God strongly warns Abimelech in Genesis chapter 20 in a dream that he is to return Sarah to her husband. Abimelech does that, but he comes to Abraham and he wants to know why. Why did you deceive me? I want you to notice in Genesis 20 and verse 11 what Abraham says. We'll come back to it and talk about it as a class. Verse 11, Abraham said, I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Not a good choice. Not a good relationship starter between Abraham and the king Abimelech. We'll come back to that as a class. But in the next chapter, Genesis chapter 21. It has been 25 years since God called Abraham to leave everything that he had ever known and go to the land that I will show you. It's been 25 years since God promised to make of Abram a great nation. And finally, 25 years later, that promised son, Isaac, is born to Abraham and Sarah. His name means he laughs, and we'll explore a little together as a class. Why did God have Abraham and Sarah name their son He laughs? Isaac. But Genesis 21 also documents an ugly incident within Abraham's family. As Isaac got just a little older, there was a day when Sarah saw Ishmael. You remember talking about him? Ishmael was the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. Ishmael was actually the firstborn son of Abraham. There was a day when Sarah saw Ishmael laughing at Isaac, and she didn't like that very much. She said in Genesis 21 in verse 10 to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son, Isaac. Abraham didn't like that very much. But God, as we continue reading, and we'll explore it a little more as a class, God provided for Hagar and Ishmael out in the wilderness. God promised both her, Hagar, and Abraham that he was going to make a different great nation of Ishmael, but God also makes crystal clear to Abraham in Genesis 21 and verse 12, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. This is the family line. This is the branch of Abraham's family tree through whom his offspring will ultimately be named. In Genesis chapter 22, Abraham faces his greatest test of trust in God. Notice Genesis 22 verses 1 and 2, where after these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. God says, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Remember, Abraham, when we started this evening, was down here to the south in the Negev. God calls him, if we zoom in to this window, God calls him to go up here into this area, into that mountain range where the mountains of Moriah are. I want you to go there, and I want you to offer him your son Isaac as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how Abraham hears this? He goes a 3 days journey up there into the mountains, and we can hear his faith when Isaac, Genesis 22 and verse 8, eventually asks, where the lamb for this burnt offering is. Abraham says, God will provide. God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. It all reaches the pivotal moment when Abraham has taken the knife, stretched out his hand. In verse 12, an angel of the Lord calls out, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And so once again, we've noticed a couple of times, here it is again in Genesis 22, God promises, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. In Genesis chapter 23, at the age of 127, Sarah, Abraham's wife, dies. Again, as you zoom in with me, she dies right here in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham purchases a field. We can read all about it in Genesis 23. He purchases a field with a cave, and that cave will come to be where many members of Abraham's family are eventually buried. He buys that cave to bury his wife Sarah. It is the first and the only piece of the promised land that he could actually call his own. Abraham lived as a sojourner and exile in this land. We'll talk all about it, but there it is, the beginning of the chosen family line, Genesis 20 through 23. I've given you just the most basic of overviews, and so I'm going to turn it over to your in-person class teacher. What do we need to see here? What do we need to remember? What is this all about, and why does it matter? Thank you so much for being in class tonight. I hope you have a great rest of your class period and a great rest of this week.